Hello everyone, Sydney is back here with you, your reproductive healthcare expert. Today we'll be discussing uterine fibroids. They have got so many names: leiomyomas, myomas, fibromas, fibroids. But have you heard about fibroids? In this video, I'll be sharing with you what a fibroid is or what it means when someone tells you they have fibroids. We shall talk about the types of fibroids. We shall talk about the signs and symptoms of uterine fibroids. We shall go ahead and look at the cause. How do they come about? We are also going to go ahead and know how fibroids affect fertility or fibroids and pregnancy. We'll all discuss them. We shall also go furthermore and look at, let's say, how to prevent and also the treatment of fibroids. So you're most welcome. I'll be back in a jiffy. So you're most welcome. Back here with you is Sydney, your reproductive healthcare expert. Straight away, what are fibroids? Well, fibroids are benign or non-cancerous growths that arise from the muscles that form the uterine cavity. And the uterus is made up of smooth muscles. So sometimes due to certain conditions, as we shall see in just a moment, we have these tissues that begin to grow abnormally in the walls or within or outside on the external part of the uterus, which is of course where a baby grows in a woman's womb. Now, basically, to begin with, there are various types of fibroids. We do have what we call the submucosal fibroids. We have intramural fibroids. We have pedunculated fibroids, and we also have subserosal fibroids. Now, all these types I've mentioned is basically based on their location. Submucosal is found on the inner lining of the uterus. Intramural is found inside the uterine tissues. If you have got your uterus like this, inside that tissue, that's where this growth begin to arise. And then we also have the subserosal, which is of course outside the uterine cavity. And then furthermore, we have what we call pedunculated fibroid. This tissue is just a protruded tissue of the uterus growing abnormally that is supported on a stalk. Now, what exactly causes uterine fibroids? Well, the cause of uterine fibroids is poorly understood, but we do have what we call the risk factors, things which increases your chances of getting uterine fibroids. So what are these factors that increase your chances of getting uterine fibroids? Well, we have obesity. If your obesity, of course, people understand it as being excessively fat or being very fat, but it's usually having too much fats in your body. You're at risk of getting uterine fibroids. And then when you like eating estrogen-rich foods, you're at risk. When you're an African by nature, that one, there is nothing you can do about it. Race, it all has to do with your genetics, okay? Because the Africans, even the black Americans, as long as your skin color is dark, now you would have genetically the smooth muscles that line the uterine cavity have the ability to easily grow very fast. That makes the African race at higher risk. We also have family history. You have a sister, mother who has ever had the uterine fibroids, you'll probably be at higher risk. Then early menarche. Early menarche, I mean beginning to see your first menstrual period very early by the age of 9, and all that increases. And then what we call nulliparity. That's also a risk factor. Nulliparity, I mean not giving birth throughout your reproductive age. And when you hit mid-30s there, you're probably at a high risk of developing uterine fibroids. Now, how do uterine fibroids come about? Where do they come from? Well, one good thing, you shouldn't worry about uterine fibroids if you've been diagnosed with it, because it is known to be that, according to research, that about 80% of women, especially of the African race, at some point in their life will have some degree of uterine fibroids, will have these growths, but usually they do not cause symptoms. However, if they get so much that they begin to cause symptoms, then it becomes of a medical concern. Then you need to seek with your healthcare provider of what to do. But where do they come from? Back to my question. Well, these are just smooth muscles that begin to grow abnormally under the influence of the hormone estrogen. However, also insulin has been known. Insulin, we know it is a hormone that is used to regulate blood glucose level, but by reducing the blood glucose level when it rises abnormally in the bloodstream. So if you have got high levels of insulin in the blood, it is going to stimulate uptake of glucose by muscle cells, but it also increase the uptake of amino acids. Amino acids, it's what the proteins, the simple units of proteins. So when you increase the uptake of amino acids by the muscles, in the process is also going to, these amino acids combine to cause growth of a tissue. It's going to result into the growth of these tissues. So they are usually just uterine muscles. The muscles that make up the uterine cavity, they're the ones that starts growing abnormally due to certain factors such as extremely high levels of estrogen, or under the influence of the hormone insulin, that results into this increased uptake of what? Amino acids, which ends up building up what? Proteins. Basically, that is it. So straight away, let's go ahead and look at what are the factors that we can modify. How can you stop yourself from getting fibroids? How can we prevent fibroids? Now, the first thing is majorly diet. That's the most thing you can do. We cannot do much about our race being a black, but it all comes to diet. Diet is very key and important. Number one, we should avoid or take little estrogen-rich foods. So what are the estrogen-rich foods? Number one is soya. When you like taking soya so much, just like the name is soya, and then we have these people, oh, I can't take porridge without soya. They're always on soya. You're actually putting yourself at risk of getting uterine fibroids that presents with some signs and symptoms, okay? Which I have not yet spoken about, but allow me to mention them. So, the signs and symptoms of uterine fibroids, number one, it usually depends on the type. If you have a fibroid that is towards the base, forming from the uterine cavity but close to the base of the uterine bladder, it is going to cause difficulty in passing urine, or you might even find it very hard to pass urine. So another one, we can have frequent urination. If it's exactly on top, compressing the walls of the urinary bladder, when the uterus expands because of the force being exerted by the fibroid and pushes against the urinary bladder, it's going to cause you what? Frequent urination. You can have frequent urination. We have flank pain. We can have constipation. And with submucosal, that is the fibroids that form in the inner lining of the uterus, there is what they call uterine hypertrophy, meaning extreme thickness. The thickness of the uterus increases so much, and this results into heavy menstrual periods. So you've got low abdominal pain, you've got heavy menses, you've got constipation, you've got frequent urination, you've got difficulty in breathing. Please check with us and let's get you sorted out. Those are all signs and symptoms of uterine fibroids. But we always do screen, because these conditions, this pain and what have you, can also be got in other abdominopelvic conditions or conditions of the lower abdomen. So when you get these signs, please consider consulting your doctor or emailing me down here on this email, and then we see how we can help you out. Now back to what I was talking about. I was talking about estrogen containing foods. Reduce on estrogen rich foods. I've mentioned number one, so I won't repeat that. And then two, foods which increase the levels of insulin in our bodies. Remember, when you increase the level of insulin, you're going to increase uptake of glucose by the muscle cells, such that glucose reduces in the bloodstream, but also you're going to increase the uptake of amino acids. So when these amino acids enter the smooth muscles of the uterine cavity, it's also going to stimulate growth Okay, now this growth is how we end up. The growths are non-cancerous. They are not cancerous. They are benign. So these growths will be the one that will start forming what? The fibroids. So also reduce foods which increase the levels of insulin, or what we call causes insulinemia. Now, what causes insulinemia or high levels of insulin in blood are usually what? The foods, sugary foods, ice cream, and ladies love these things so much. Oh my God, I don't know how we're going to help you. I need ice cream, I need chocolate, I need sweets, I need candy, I need honey, I need juice. Minute made you. No, I'm not going to. Generally, avoid too much sugars, okay? Avoid too much sugars. Try to limit your sugar intake a little bit. But, however, take them in regulated amounts. Furthermore, red meat is well known for increasing the levels of estrogen in your body. So consider reducing what? On the red meat. Another one, ensure that you take vitamin D. Now, vitamin D is very essential for protecting you from fibroids, by the way. It's known to be a pro-hormone. So that means vitamin D is actually an anti-estrogen, which means it suppresses the levels of estrogen. Remember, it is under the influence of estrogen that these smooth muscles of the uterus are stimulated to furthermore go ahead and divide and end up forming a uterine mass that we are calling the fibroid. So for this reason, I would like to tell you that reduce on the uptake of the sugars, the uptake of those estrogen-rich foods, and increase. For vitamin D, we are increasing. How do we increase? Exposure to the sun. Now you should know that the darker your skin, the less your ability to get vitamin D. Sounds weird. I know you're saying, oh my God, dark skin, dark color, black color, that's what absorbs heat, that's what absorbs light. But now take it from me today, the darker your skin, the less your chances of getting vitamin D from the sun. But we do not only get vitamin D from the sun, there are actually pills for vitamin D. Okay? When we take a pill, daily dose is about 1,000 to 4,000 international units. That's enough for a day. But generally, just ensure that you're getting enough vitamin D. It will protect you. Furthermore, take vegetables. Vegetables have what we call flavonoids. Flavonoids are anti-cancerous foods, which are very important not only for the cancers, but even for the fibroids or benign growths. They generally are against abnormal growths that occur within the human body. So flavonoids, we get them from the different vegetables. And then apart from the diet, you would also consider keeping down your weight. Now, if you're very fat, that's not your fault probably, but you can work on it through your diet, through eating avoiding too much fats and also too much sugars to keep your weight down. But most of all, kindly consider doing cardio exercise. Last time I told us that cardio exercise is what we keep doing when we are active, causing us to sweat, such as jogging, skipping, swimming, you name it, riding a bike. So consider having active exercises to help you reduce your weight. When you have a lot of fats, remember that from the fat tissues, we are going to get a lot of what? Estrogen being synthesized from there. And then which estrogen is not what we want to have. By the way, that is the reason why women who are no longer in the reproductive age, women whom their estrogen levels have dropped very low, no longer suffer from what? The uterine fibroids. They affect those in reproductive age because they are so much influenced by the hormone estrogen. Okay, so how about you've got these uterine fibroids and you're pregnant? Does it affect fertility? Well, not exactly, but to some extent, certain types may affect fertility, but it can also risk you, it's a risk factor for sometimes having what we call ectopic pregnancy, that is pregnancy that occurs outside the uterus, in most cases around the fallopian tubes. Fallopian tubes are the tubes through which the sperm cells pass through when they are going to the ovaries. So usually these pregnancies do not live up to term because they are not growing in the right place. We usually terminate them to save the mother, because it's either both of you go or you consider saving the mother. So it's very essential that we also look into these aspects. Then when we talk about once you have conceived, in most cases you might end up having a preterm delivery. meaning you give birth to a baby that is not yet fully matured, and then even if the baby goes up to term, and maybe sometimes the fibroids can tend to block the normal birth canal, and you would consider going for surgery, but even after cesarean section or normal birth, because of the thickening of the uterus that is more or abnormal beyond, there tends to be a lot of bleeding, which is usually life-threatening. Medically, we call it postpartum hemorrhage. So that's bleeding after childbirth, which is usually life-threatening. But generally, frankly speaking, someone can live with and even give birth with when they do have what we call the fibroids. So basically, and when you're considering another ways that you can prevent fibroids, when you're considering using a contraceptive methods, I would advise you to use the progestin only containing contraceptives and not those that have some estrogen in them. They would really help with that. Now, what about treatment if at all you've now gotten your fibroids? Well, number one, I said many ladies out there do have fibroids, but they do not know because it's not causing them any signs or symptoms. They are simply smooth muscles of your uterus that are just growing. So there is no problem with that. Actually, when you do not have symptoms, you do not need any treatment. But once they have started causing you pains, the heavy menses, the bleeding, and the flank pain, the difficulty in passing urine, then you probably need management. At an early stage, we usually just manage those symptoms and encourage you to adhere for 90 days to low estrogen containing food diet, take little sugars. Basically, a diet can shrink a fibroids, okay? It usually shrinks these fibroids. And then, so the first is usually the lifestyle modification that I've already told you in the explanation. Exercise, so you have to keep your weight down because too much fats is a problem. Keep your estrogen levels down, avoid red meat, avoid soya, and also reduce taking of sugary foods. And then furthermore, about the management, there are certain medications which we give and they help to shrink these fibroids. But sometimes they have gone a little bit beyond just ordinary medications. Then we go for what we call surgeries. Now there are many surgeries. Basically, I will talk about 3, and which are also very important that we should always know. There's what they call uterine fibroid embolization. Now the fibroids grow because they're having a blood supply. The blood is what takes for them the nutrients they need to grow because they are just abnormal smooth muscle cells. So when we cut this blood supply to them, they begin to shrink. How do we cut the blood supply? Well, a small incision is made around your thighs, and a catheter or tube rubber inserted, plastic rubber is inserted through the vein, okay? What we call the femoral vein, and it goes up to the uterine arteries. Now, the uterine arteries, once this tube is inserted there are certain chemicals that are released into the bloodstream. They have bigger particles, so they begin to affect blood supply to the fibroids, which causes these fibroids to shrink. It's a procedure that is not so invasive. And then another surgery is what we call myomectomy, where these fibroids are removed surgically. They open your abdominal cavity, open the uterus, or wherever they are outside, depending on where the scan has shown their location. They are then removed from you. Now, the disadvantage of myomectomy, sometimes it can increase somehow risk of what we call uterine rupture. So after they have removed, you conceive. If the surgeon might have hit somehow into the uterine cavity, then it can put you at some risk of having a uterine rupture during pregnancy. That's rare though, that's why I said if some errors occur. And then another one we call, so here your fertility will be preserved because they are only removing the fibroids. Then we have what we call hysterectomy, where the uterus is removed. Now following, for example, these treatment options that usually leaves you with your uterus still there are some chances of recurrence, but especially when we do myomectomy, when the fibroids are just removed surgically. But in uterine fibroid embolization, chances of recurrence are a little bit low. Then in hysterectomy, of course, the uterus has been removed. You will no longer be able to conceive or have a child, and the fibroid will also never come back because it has got nowhere to stage its house. I mean, they have removed the uterine cavity. So guys, that is what I can tell you about this thing called fibromas or uterine fibroids. So remember to protect yourself from it. Remember to stay tuned. There are 9 cancerous. They can never become cancers. And I would like to tell you that I appreciate you for coming up to the end of this video. Remember to hit like, remember to subscribe, but most of all, give me your comments on the topics you would like me to cover for you, and we'll get you sorted.